Hello and welcome to Backlinking, the PKM podcast. In today's podcast episode, we are diving into something that I find really interesting and that I talk about a lot, and that is the idea of like PKM and what the biggest issue with PKM is. Because personal knowledge management has gained a lot of popularity the last couple of years, especially after the second brain book. But like managing your knowledge, or at least writing it down, has been something people have done for a very, very long time. It was previously done using notebooks, but after we got computers and note-taking apps, it has just gotten a lot bigger, and now we have so many different applications to choose from. Whereas earlier, like if you go 10, 20, 25, 30 years ago, probably a little longer than that, we had a lot of notebook brands to choose from. So it has changed, but the idea has stayed the same for a long time. There are several benefits with writing things down and going back and looking at it, and I do both. Like I use my notebooks, which I have right here. I am currently playing around with bullet journaling again, and there is a bullet journaling podcast coming quite soon as well. But I've also used note-taking apps, which I am currently using. I am currently using Readwise and Heptabase and Sublime and a lot of different applications. So I've done both, but there is a couple of big issues with personal knowledge management. And the first one, and this doesn't apply as like PKM and productivity as a hobby, because I think that is really important to say. A lot of the people you see on Planner YouTube or personal knowledge management side of YouTube, they use this either as a hobby or it is actually a part of their work. They are full-time content creators who get paid for testing out applications and playing around with them and making videos and content in general about them. That's the first like half of Planner YouTube and PKM YouTube. The second half of it is people like myself who treat this more as a hobby, where this might sound weird, but I promise it makes sense. Where someone likes to play video games or watch TV shows. I almost never watch TV shows. I rather put on a YouTube video and play around with a couple of note-taking apps. That's just my hobby, and it's just something I enjoy doing for fun. It isn't about being productive at that point. It is just about having fun and seeing technology develop and testing out different AI solutions. And sometimes I might find something that will actually benefit my productivity and work, but most of the time it is only for fun. So that's the two parts we have. And for me specifically, but I guess also for a lot of other people in the space, PKM productivity often feels like a whole job in itself. Managing all of my highlights, for example, might feel like a job in itself. And there are quite a few benefits I have from doing that, from managing my knowledge and going back and looking through it and connecting different ideas together. There are a few benefits which I mainly find when I'm creating content, not necessarily for my daily life. It isn't that many benefits. It might also be because of the things I read and watch. But in whenever I'm creating content, having those things linked together and having a lot of notes to draw from actually makes it easier to create content, especially blog posts for YouTube videos. I actually don't do that a lot. I actually just write down my ideas and then get to them. But for blog posts, it has a lot of benefits. But doing those things, it takes time to the point where it almost feels like a full-time job at some points. And in my case, as I said, it is okay since it is my hobby. It is the thing I like doing in my spare time. Like I go to work, I come home, I film these videos, I play around with a couple of applications, I write down some ideas for new videos. That is basically what I do, and I love creating content around these applications. And as I've said many times, like I really like creating content, and I have this dream of being able to pursue content creation at some point as a full-time job. So um, for me, again, it is a little different, and for a lot of people in the space, it is a little different. This is fun. This is things we do in our spare time. And for the other half, it's actually their job. That's what makes them money, creating content or testing out applications or talking about application. It is their job. So doing that make it can be defined as being productive. That is what I'm trying to say. While in my case, it can be defined as fun and leisure. But for uh, regular people who aren't that into productivity, but they want to be more productive and write down their ideas, like a great example of this is my sister and a couple of her friends, and also my sister-in-law, who create like Notion dashboards or buy Notion dashboards. And when they start using it, they quickly figure out how much time it takes to maintain a system like this. My sister mentioned that earlier this week that she had a problem with one of those Notion templates because the people who build Notion templates, they sell you aesthetic, and it makes sense because I wouldn't ever purchase a Notion template that was quote unquote ugly or didn't look good. I probably wouldn't purchase it. It's that simple. So it needs to look good. And the same goes for like note-taking apps. Like I've heard many people say that they won't use Ample Note because they don't like the way it looks. So we are attracted to things that look good, but often things that look good in these systems, they require a lot of effort to maintain it looking good. And like my Hepta-based system is currently chaos. I'm probably the only one who knows where to find things inside of there. And I think that is the right way to go. If I'm the only one that can figure out how the system works, I have probably done something right because it is chaotic, but it is organized enough for me to find the thing I'm looking for. The more like organization you put into a system, the harder it is to maintain, and the more quickly you will end up just giving up on the whole idea of PKM. And that is the problem I'm talking about here, is that when personal knowledge management becomes a second job on top of your first job just to be able to do your first job better, you probably have a problem. That does not apply, as I said, if you have PKM as a hobby, because I think hobbies are important, and it is important to spend time doing things that you find fun. And as long as you know that this isn't making you more productive, it is only for fun, and you might find a thing or two that will help you become more productive. But in general, it won't. Um, as long as you know that, it is different. The second thing is, of course, if you have this as your job. And why are those two things important? Because that's where most of the content around PKM comes from. Most of the content around personal knowledge management comes from people who are either in the first or the second bucket. And as we watch content and tutorial around these applications, they affect us in some way or another. So that's why I'm using those two as examples, because most people aren't in one of those two buckets. And that's the problem when you watch all of these content, that most of the content is made by people who are in one of those buckets and have different needs from a regular person who just wants to become more productive. And that is, again, one of the biggest issues with personal knowledge management. It becomes a second job on top of your first one. And the benefits aren't that high either. It isn't like spending 8 hours of work on your PKM system will make your regular job only last 4 hours instead of eight. It won't make you that much more effective. Of course, there is a little bit of a benefit. You might save a little bit more time if you know where to find things. But in general, the benefits aren't high enough to justify spending 4 to 8 hours each day. And I've heard stories of people like using a lot of time. 4 to 8 hours is probably an over exaggeration, but in general, like people use a lot of time trying to maintain their system, um, and that is the main issue we have with personal knowledge management in general. Like all of the marketing stuff, all of the templates, all of the things that look pretty, that aren't easy to maintain, but some people can do it because they have it as their hobby or as their job. And it ends up like, I don't know if you've seen this meme with a lot of different note taking apps, and you have this title, just use Apple Notes because it is simple. I think a lot of people would benefit from simplifying their systems. And I'm going to be completely honest, I would probably benefit from having a simpler system, but I would lose on the other half, where like my hobby wouldn't be as fun if I had to use fewer applications. So I have decided that it's okay to be quote unquote unproductive with these applications, as long as like I'm able to do my job, and I'm also sure, or I can differentiate between what's a hobby and what's actual work. If I can do that, then it's okay to have that many applications. But as I said earlier, like I think a lot of people could benefit from simplifying their system. I think too many people have way too advanced like Notion setups to the point where you spend more time trying to figure out the system or learning the system than you actually use um, spending time working with the system. Let me try to explain that. Like let's say you buy a really in-depth Notion template, a second brain template, and some of them are really good, and some of them or some people will benefit a lot from them. But let's say you do that, you buy a huge Notion template, and you spend a day to maybe three learning the system. Sometimes it even takes longer. Notion is quite a complex application, so you spend a lot of time trying to learn Notion, and you learn it, and then you only use it for a week or two, and then you figure out that you can't maintain a system like this because it takes too much time. um, you've basically just wasted a lot of money on a template, wasted a lot of time learning the application, and uh, ended up not using it because it was too complex, and you would rather go to something like My Mind or Mem, or even simpler. Apple Notes is a good one. Bear Notes is another good one, just as simple as possible. And I think most people probably end up there. Most people don't have the time to manage their knowledge. They just want to be able to find the thing they're looking for when they search for that thing. I think most people end up in that bucket. Like you want to write something down and you want to find it whenever you need it. You don't want to spend a half a day trying to fix your system so you can actually find the thing you are looking for. And that is basically the problem with PKM right now, is that most of the stuff ends up in that category. Like most of the YouTube videos, most of the tutorials, most of the things you see end up in that category, where you need to spend a lot of time setting up a system, maintaining it. If you take my like productivity system, my daily reflections, I use the bullet journal method a lot for my reflections. Like my daily reflections takes about 5 to 10 minutes. My weekly ones takes about 15 minutes to half an hour, depending on how much has happened. And most of that is like the journaling part and the reflecting on the journaling part. My monthly ones take 15 to 20 minutes. My yearly ones probably take about an hour or two. But in my yearly reflections, I like First of all, I have vacation days around Christmas, so I'm off work and I just reflect on everything and I set new goals. And it takes a bit of time, but I also like reflecting on things to see whether or not I am heading in the direction I actually want and doing the things I want in life. That is also why I do the bullet journal method a lot. But in general, like I wouldn't say that I spend a lot of time maintaining my system. Probably around half an hour a week. The daily reflections are just what did I do yesterday? What do I have to move to today? Are there any urgent tasks that need to be fast tracked to today? Basically, that's all I do. I might sometimes take a look at my meeting notes to see whether or not I have something important to do, but generally it doesn't take a lot of work. And I think that is really important. So I would say the biggest problem with personal knowledge management is when personal knowledge management ends up becoming a secondary job instead of being something that may either makes us more productive or actually is just fun to use. I think both of those are okay. And honestly, I think everything is okay. You just have to do whatever fits you. But I just wanted to jump on, and I think that it is important to talk about it. As someone who creates content around personal knowledge management, it is important to just put up a reminder that says that, like, the things I do aren't necessarily being productive. It is more about being fun. And personal knowledge management has this big issue of spending too much time on it. And I think that like covers up everything for today's podcast episode. If you found it interesting, please do subscribe or follow. I think it's called on Spotify. Comment if you have any questions. And as usual, I hope to see you again quite soon.